Okay, now I want to talk to you about how we create a scatter plot to be able to represent our data. So scatter plots are only useful when we're looking at bivariate data because it's a way of showing two different variables against each other, comparing them. Okay, so here we have some data. We've got a couple of students. I surveyed them and said, how long did you study? And then I compared that to how they performed in our maths exam. So a student who studied 3 hours scored 70%, kid that studied 5 hours scored 80%, someone who studied for half an hour scored 45%, someone who studied for 1 hour got 52%, and then someone who studied for a whole 8 hours got 91%. Okay, so now I want to plot these scores onto a graph. Now you'll notice that when graphing with bivariate data, the independent variable always goes on the bottom, no matter what. So your x-axis is always your independent variable, and your y-axis is your dependent variable. So remember, independent being the one that doesn't change based on the other one. Okay, so students are going to spend an amount of time studying, and that isn't going to be dependent on the score that they end up getting, because this happens first. Okay, so that's our independent variable, and this is graphed in hours. Okay, and over here we've got their exam score as a percentage, and that one depends on how much they studied. Or we're about to see if that depends on how much they studied. Okay, cool. So the first student studied 3 hours and scored 70%, so I'm going to go across and find 3 on my x-axis and go up and find 70%. And I'm going to put a dot there. So the dot should be above the 3 and should be in line with the 70. Mind you, I'm doing this freehand, so when you do it, hopefully you will use a ruler, so yours will be nice and neat. Okay, cool. Next up, students spent 5 hours and they scored 80%. So that looks like it'll be about there, so I'm putting a dot there. Next student did half an hour, so that would be about here, and they scored 45%, so that would go there. Then we've got students spent 1 hour and they got 52%. Then lastly, a student spent a whole 8 hours and got 91%. That looks like it might go about there. Okay, now when it comes to scatter plots, when we're graphing them, we don't connect our dots. We don't turn it into a line graph or anything like that. We just leave them as dots. Okay, so each dot represents one person or one pair of results, data, and then we can look and see if there's a correlation. Okay, so we are going to cover correlation in a bit in another video, but here you can see there's a very clear line. The less they study, the worse they score, and as they study more and more, the hours of study go up, their scores go up. So there is a direct positive correlation here, but we'll cover that in a bit. So key things to remember from this lesson are that when you're graphing to create any kind of graph, whether it's a scatter plot or a line graph or a column graph, anything, you need to have your independent variable along the bottom and your dependent variable goes along the side. Other things to note from this lesson are with scatter plots, you're just putting dots, okay? So you take these two things that you're comparing and you put a dot at where those two numbers meet, okay? Great, thank you for watching.